A single sound brought chaos to the set and nearly destroyed one of the film's most iconic scenes.
There are films people watch, and then there are films that become part of the human experience, woven into the fabric of culture so deeply that generations who weren't even alive when they were made can still hum every melody and recite every line. The Sound of Music is one of those films. Released in 1965, it swept the Academy Awards, dethroned Gone with the Wind as the highest-grossing film in history, and sold hundreds of millions of tickets worldwide. But behind the rolling hills of Salzburg, behind the pristine white dresses and perfectly harmonized voices, something else was happening entirely. Stories were buried, scandals were silenced, and a studio made sure that what happened on certain sets, on certain days, stayed locked away for decades. This is the account of the scenes, the secrets, and the chaos that 20th Century Fox never wanted you to know. Of all the moments in The Sound of Music, perhaps none is more timelessly romantic than the gazebo scene, the soft, glowing exchange between Maria and Captain Von Trapp where, at last, they confess their love for each other. Audiences have swooned over that scene for 60 years. They've replayed it, studied it, and used it as a standard for cinematic romance. What they have never been told, at least not by the studio, is that the scene was an absolute catastrophe to film. The problem came from the lighting equipment. The production team was using massive carbon arc lights to simulate the gentle glow of moonlight. These machines were powerful and effective, but they also produced an extraordinary amount of noise. Not just any noise. A low, flatulent, sputtering sound that cut through every romantic moment like a foghorn at a wedding. Every single time Christopher Plummer leaned toward Julie Andrews, every time the dialogue reached its most tender point, those lights let loose with an obscene, ridiculous noise. The cast could not hold it together. Andrews would later describe it in a television interview, laughing as she recalled it. The harder they tried to stay serious, the worse the laughter became. Crew members were suppressing smiles behind their hands. Takes were ruined one after another. Hours passed. Director Robert Wise eventually made a decision that would define the scene's visual legacy entirely by accident. He scrapped the bright lighting plan altogether and positioned the actors in silhouette, backlit by the warm glow of the gazebo windows. Faces half-hidden, bodies outlined against golden light. It became one of the most visually iconic compositions in the film. That signature look? It was not an artistic vision. It was a workaround. And the studio told everyone involved to say nothing about what had actually happened. For years, it worked. The truth only surfaced when Andrews herself recounted it publicly decades later. While Andrews charmed everyone around her, her leading man was waging a private war with the entire production. Christopher Plummer, a classically trained stage actor with serious dramatic ambitions, did not want to be in The Sound of Music. He found the material saccharine, the tone sentimental beyond endurance, and the whole enterprise beneath his abilities. His nickname for the film, which he used freely among friends and eventually in his memoir In Spite of Myself, was The Sound of Mucus. He also referred to it simply as S&M, and not with affection. Plummer turned down the role multiple times before director Robert Wise flew to London to meet him face to face. Plummer eventually agreed, but on specific conditions. The character needed more depth, more conflict, better dialogue, and a song of his own. That demand directly produced Edelweiss, a song most of the world believes to be a traditional Austrian folk melody. It is not. Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein, too, wrote it specifically for Captain Von Trapp, as a way of giving the character an emotional moment the actor found worthy of his involvement. Even after production began, Plummer struggled deeply. He openly admitted in later interviews and in his memoir that he drank heavily throughout filming. During one of the most emotionally charged performances in the entire film, the Edelweiss reprise at the Salzburg Festival, Plummer confessed he was significantly intoxicated. The scene, which audiences consistently cite as one of the most moving moments of the movie, was delivered by a man who later described himself on that day as being in no condition to stand straight. Yet the performance worked. It worked so completely that it fooled everyone for decades. There was one more indignity Plummer endured that never made it into official studio communications. His singing voice, at least for the demanding vocal passages, was not entirely his own. A professional singer named Bill Lee provided the extended and higher register vocal portions of the Captain songs. Lee had performed similar vocal work for Disney productions and was trusted in the industry. Plummer, furious at the decision, felt it was a direct insult to his professionalism. Audiences never noticed. Lee's voice blended so seamlessly with the character's presence that even devoted fans of the film have been surprised to learn the truth. Salzburg in 1964 was not the fairy tale location it appeared to be on screen. The weather that year was historically terrible, one of the wettest on record for the region. What Robert Wise had scheduled as a 6-week location shoot stretched to 11 weeks, devastating the budget and exhausting the crew. But weather was not the only danger hiding beneath those picture postcard landscapes. During the filming of the boat scene, the cheerful, sun-dappled sequence where the Von-trapped children fall into the lake, 5-year-old Kim Carruth, who played the youngest daughter Gretel, nearly drowned. The crew had informed Julie Andrews before the take that Kim could not swim. The plan was for Andrews to fall toward the child when the boat tipped and catch her immediately. When the boat capsized, Andrews fell in the wrong direction. Kim went under the water twice before another cast member intervened and pulled her out. She had swallowed enough water to make her physically ill on the lakeside. The experience left her with a fear of water that persisted for years. Andrews was visibly shaken by the incident and later called it one of the most frightening moments she experienced during the entire production. And then there is the opening. That image, Julie Andrews, arms extended, spinning through a vast green alpine meadow while the camera pulls back to reveal the mountains behind her, is perhaps the single most recognizable shot in the film. It radiates freedom, joy, and effortless beauty. The reality was considerably more brutal. To achieve that sweeping aerial perspective, a helicopter had to fly at extremely low altitude directly above Andrews, passing over her multiple times to capture the shot from different angles. Each pass sent a violent wall of rotor wind hammering down onto her. Andrews was knocked flat onto the grass repeatedly, by some accounts 6 or 7 times, and had to get up, straighten herself, and resume her expression of transcendent happiness. She later joked in interviews that she was nearly blown across the Austrian border. The scene remains one of cinema's most beloved images. It was built on a foundation of the lead actress being knocked repeatedly to the ground. 20th Century Fox had enormous financial stakes attached to the sound of music from the very beginning. The studio had been devastated by the runaway costs of Cleopatra and was betting a significant portion of its recovery on this musical. When location filming in Salzburg ran 5 weeks over schedule, the budget swelled far beyond what executives had projected. There were moments, studio insiders later admitted, when people genuinely worried the production would not survive. Against that backdrop, a studio controlling its public narrative was not surprising. A laughing cast ruining a romantic scene because of flatulent lighting equipment was not the story Fox wanted circulating. A lead actor who openly despised the project was not a selling point. A near drowning of a child actress was not something a marketing department wanted attached to its family film. So the stories were suppressed, the cast was cautioned, and the official version, a harmonious, inspired, smoothly executed production, was the only version available to the public for decades. What makes The Sound of Music remarkable, in hindsight, is not that these things were hidden. Studios have always protected their investments. What is remarkable is that despite the chaos, despite the budget disasters, the drunk lead actor, the laughing fits, and the helicopter assaults, the film that emerged from all of it became genuinely extraordinary. Sometimes the most beautiful things are built out of the most improbable wreckage. And sometimes the most romantic scene in a classic film exists precisely because the original plan was a complete and utter disaster.